Hi everyone, I'm Megan Sullivan and welcome to my new series, Chrono Critique, where I play history-based video games and review their gameplay and historical accuracy for your educational entertainment. Today I'm reviewing Cross of the Dutchman, a short but enjoyable hack-and-slash brawler developed by Triangle Studios. Cross of the Dutchman takes place in and around the farmlands of Frisia or Friesland in the early 17th century and follows the adventures of the real-life folk hero Peer Donia, later known to history as Grote Peer, the notorious Cross of the Dutchman. Rather than follow the entire narrative arc of Peer's life, the game acts as a sort of prologue to his adventures, focusing on his early life as a simple farmer who just wants to protect his family and friends from an invading horde of Saxons. Most of the action takes place in the charming Frisian countryside, with its bright blue waters and verdant fields. Though the overall art style, especially the character art, is fairly basic, the developer makes up for this with the use of rich primary colors that are a visual delight, and adds excellent sound effects and music that elevate the game to a higher level. The gameplay, a combination of hack and slash and brawler, is very straightforward. Peer either uses his bare knuckles or a giant two-handed sword to fight off waves of Saxon enemies. Attacks include one light attack and a small handful of interchangeable heavy attacks that shift the trajectory of Peer's blows. It's an overly simplistic form of combat, but a surprisingly fun one. It feels good to smack around Saxon soldiers and watch them ragdoll all over the place, even landing in trees or on roofs, although I suspect that's a weird physics issue in the game, but whatever, it's hilarious. I also appreciate the ability to spend gold to permanently raise your health and stamina bars, the latter of which is needed to make use of heavy attacks. Now, there were times when my epic sword swings and massive punches didn't land, which was annoying, and enemy hordes became overwhelming, especially towards the end of the game, causing me to retreat in order to regenerate my health, which made me think a dodge parry option would have come in handy. But most of the time I could just point and click my way out of a jam, or spam different buttons on my PlayStation controller. Oh, and any AI companions who had joined my party would occasionally help me out. In short, even with a couple of flaws, trading fisticuffs with the enemy is fun. Less fun are the timed stealth missions. Now look, I appreciate Triangle Studios trying to mix it up here, but having to traverse a map while sneaking past guards and relying on a sometimes confusing minimap marker all before the clock runs out feels like a frustrating and unnecessary chore. On the other hand, I do like that once you complete a mission, you're treated to animated cutscenes that let you get to know Peer and his fellow freedom fighters a bit better. The script is a mix of very serious and very silly dialogue, and I enjoy the clever nods to Peer Donia's legacy sprinkled throughout the story. Speaking of which, how would I review the historical accuracy of this game? Well, it's hard to say because we're dealing with more myth than man to begin with. The truth is, there's not a whole lot known about Peer Donia, except a small handful of facts and possible fictions. Peer Donia was born in Frisia or Friesland in the late 15th century. Just like in the game, he lived in a farmstead between the towns of Arum and Kimsford and was married to a woman named Rins and had 2 children. Peer led a normal life as a farmer and seemed relatively untouched by the ongoing civil war that plagued Frisia at the time. That is, until one side in the war, operating under the Duke of Saxony, who in turn supported the Habsburgs of the Holy Roman Empire, decided to hire a group of mercenaries known as the Black Band. The Black Band had a terrible reputation, and when they didn't receive their pay in a timely manner, they took their anger out on the local populace. Tragically, one of the victims was Peer's own wife, who was brutally raped and murdered before the mercenaries burned down Peer's farm and other surrounding homesteads. Outraged and motivated by the need for vengeance, Peer then famously gathered an army of resistance fighters and helped wage both a land and sea war against the Saxons and anyone on their side, including the Dutch, nearly 30 of whose ships Peer managed to sink in a single day, earning Peer the infamous title Cross of the Dutchman, or more accurately, Cross of the Hollanders. Eventually, however, Peer became disenfranchised with the war when he realized the side he'd thrown in with wasn't really all that interested in freedom for Frisians. Thus, Peer retired from battle and lived quietly until his death in 1520. Now that's a super simple summary of Peer's life. I'll do a deeper dive of this legendary figure in a future episode of History and Games, so please be excited. At any rate, because the game is a prologue to these events, we don't get the opportunity to experience any of the ship battles or castle raids Peer famously took part in. But you can tell Triangle Studios did their homework. because there are several references to some of the more interesting bits of Pierre's legend. For example, Pierre Donia was said to be nearly 7 feet tall and was known to wield a two-handed sword in battle. Since Pierre was known to be large and rather brutish, I really appreciate the developers' decision to make this game a brawler hack and slash. It feels appropriate, and the fact that Pierre is a likable but hot-headed oaf from the outset of the game makes his narrative arc that much more believable. I also like that many of the allies Pierre collects in the game are in fact real-life figures who would have fought alongside Pierre in his war against the Saxons. So despite taking place before Pierre's more nefarious activities, Triangle Studios does a good job of setting up the circumstances that lead Pierre into becoming Grut de Pierre, as well as staying true to some of the more celebrated aspects of his folklore. In short, or in this case tall, Cross of the Dutchman is a basic but satisfying game that manages to entertain as well as educate. At just a shade under 5 hours long, and currently at just a shade under $5, it's a fun way to whittle away an afternoon while expanding your historical horizons. And that's it for this episode of Chrono Critique. Have any suggestions for a future episode? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you later.